Okay, Acts 13, part 2. This region here is called Pamphylia. I'm going to go Pamphylia. And Italia and Perga are in the region of Pamphylia. Up here, it's an odd name. It starts with PS, Pisidia. Pisidia. And there's another Antioch up there. And so Italia to Perga, up here to Pisidian Antioch. So it'd be like saying Washington, Linden. There are different states in the United States, and there are some places where they have the same name of towns. Which Springfield are you from? The one in Oregon or the one in Illinois? I'm in the Oregon Springfield. So I'm in the Pisidian Antioch, because over here is the Syrian Antioch, named after a guy. Anyway, they get to Pisidian Antioch, and it's interesting. They first go to the synagogue, like they're always supposed to do. You go to the Jews first. Why is that a good thing? Well, it's a place to preach. It's you start out with a background of people who have a background in what you're talking about, and they always link the Old Testament and the laws and everything, the thought of a Messiah and everything into Jesus, and then he is the real Messiah. And so you always start out with that. And the people in the synagogue read from the law and so on, and then they asked, hey, you guys are from out of town. You guys have something to tell us? So they talked to them about the Messiah, Jesus. And there's not just Jews there, but also believing Gentiles. That means they believed in the one God. They believed in Judaism, and they were converts, but they weren't quite thought as highly of as a Jewish person by roots who was a Jew. And so then they do one of these walkthroughs to tie everything in. By the way, they say 450 years. And we always thought, weren't the Israelites in Egypt for 400 years? They were, but then he also tacks on the 40 years in the desert, plus the 10 years it took to defeat all the tribes in Canaan once they took it over. Anyway, little side note. So as he's tying in the Gentiles are getting pretty excited. And they start bringing up passages that talk about Jesus being the Messiah, and how he was scoffed at, and how even if you were told that you Jews, you wouldn't believe, kind of thing. Also, they talk about David, and David died and decayed, and they bring up a verse that says, you will not let your Holy One's seed decay, meaning when Jesus rose on the third day, his body would not have decayed yet. And we all know that David decayed. Why are they bringing that up? Well, since the Jews were starting to feel that the Messiah would never come, some of them said, well, you know what if maybe, what was our greatest time? Well, it was the time when David was king. You know what? Maybe God was talking about him. Maybe he was our Messiah. Maybe it's been, something that happened a long time ago and we just kind of missed it. And Paul and Barnabas and the boys are coming and saying, no, the Messiah just came. He died and rose again. And we're here as witnesses to tell you about it. And this is how it fits in the Old Testament. And anyway, everybody started getting excited about it. The Jews kind of thought it was pretty cool, but weren't quite sure. The Gentiles were just totally digging it, because it means that they're part of the game now too, and equal. And they're told, hey, come back next week and talk to us again. Well, it says in here, when they come back next week, about the entire town was there. And the Gentiles were all jacked. The Jews are kind of wondering. And then when they were talking about things, and they were quoting from the scripture where it says, I have made you a light for the Gentiles, that you may bring salvation to the ends of the earth. The Gentiles were like, yes. And the Jews were like, huh? What? And they were upset. Well, it's human nature, not just demonizing Jews here. It's human nature for us, when we're told that we're special, and then all of a sudden someone says, we've said it before in class, you know, you're really special, just like everyone else. You're like, oh. And you don't feel as special. But you still should. If I said you're special, and you felt good about that, and I said, and you're special to somebody else, if you had the heart of Jesus, you would be even more overjoyed that not only you were special, but that person sitting next to me was special. But we're sinful, and we are selfish. And when we're told we're special, and then someone else is told they're special, we kind of feel like, oh, now our specialness is sort of, you know, the shine has been taken off. Because we don't have full hearts like Jesus. Now, there's an interesting video on YouTube that was shown back in the early 70s, late 60s, that I had to watch as a teacher at Northwestern when I was going through my teaching classes. And it was, I think, called A Class Divided. And I'm going to try to get a link to you on YouTube to watch it. I'd love for you to watch it with a parent. But what they do is this teacher from Iowa takes these kids as an outrageous experiment. She tells some of the kids that they're more special than other kids, and they document all the stuff that happens. And what she was doing was she was showing what real racism is. You know, there's a lot of talk of racism nowadays, and people are quick to use the word racism, and I don't know, I think sometimes you're sort of undercutting what real racism is. It's terrible. It's awful. And she saw racism happening in the late 60s and decided, I'm going to do an experiment in my classroom that's going to really teach these kids a lesson. So I'll put a link in there. So the Jews are upset with them, and then they take off their sandals, and they shook off the dust of their feet, and they kind of take their sandals and just take off like that as they go away. Now, some people might equate what they did to flipping the bird to them, but that's not really the case. What it is more, I wash my hands of you. If you want to believe that way, you Jews who are upset with us, then it's on you. We told you. Okay? That's what shaking the dust off means. All right? And the disciples head on to their next spot. All right, I will post this one.